Welcome to Finding Flow, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of innovators, builders, and leaders who are shaping the future while staying grounded in their values. I'm your host, Carl McDonald, and today I'm joined by a guest whose global journey through finance, fashion, technology, and sustainability is nothing short of extraordinary. Charles Allard Jr. is the founder of Delvify, a materials tech company pioneering AI-powered solutions to connect brands and suppliers for a faster, more sustainable future. With decades of experience scaling businesses across Asia, Europe, and beyond, Charles brings a powerful perspective on innovation, resilience, and the kind of impact that goes beyond profits. So, Charles, welcome to Finding Flow. It's so great to have you here, and welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Kyle. It's great to help a fellow entrepreneur launch and sustain their business.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And I suppose let's start with a bit of your backstory. You've had such a rich and varied career across continents and industries. What originally drew you into the world of entrepreneurship and innovation?
Well, I'm a contrarian. So when someone says go left, I say, well, why can't we go right?
Yeah.
And I think for entrepreneurs, that's probably a desirable trait, but it makes it difficult for entrepreneurs to work in very large companies. You end up being an intrapreneur, so working
Mm.
inside larger companies, developing new products and new ideas and trying to bring those to fruition. Oftentimes those are blocked because when you're working for larger companies, they have their own inertia, but sometimes they succeed. But really the ability to look at problems and say, wait, I think I know a solution to that. And then to act on that intuition and gather evidence and move that forward, I think is a way that many entrepreneurs look at the world, and certainly one that I embrace as well.
Very, very good. And I saw you quote Thoreau, the price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. I really like that. It really resonated with me. And I suppose, how has that philosophy influenced how you make decisions in life and in business?
Well, Thoreau was a contrarian as well, although his entrepreneurship was in writing. He was a very famous American writer.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of a memento mori. I think that we
Hmm.
all should realize that we have a limited amount of time on Earth, and we should be kind to the people around us and try and make life better for other people. And so every time you do something, it takes a little bit of your life away. And if you're going to do something that's lasting, you should look to help other people and make their journey a little bit easier.
Yeah, I really love that. And I suppose let's maybe talk about Delvify. You're tackling a really complex but vital challenge in the material space. What problem are you solving, and how did the idea for Delvify come about?
Well, we're in a very large industry, perhaps the largest industry in the world. Most of the listeners who are not in the industry will not have much of an awareness of the complication of the supply chain and the processes that go into making the apparel that they wear, the apparel that they sit on, that they
Mm.
drive in, that they dress their wounds with, that power and contain components of missiles that fly around the world. It's really, fabrics and textiles is an enormously large industry. Um, During COVID, my co-founder and I, Joe Diestel, who is the owner of quite a large intimates apparel business with some factories in Sri Lanka, and I were kind of bored, as we all were, I think, during COVID at various times. And we sat down to kind of discuss some problems. So he came to me with a couple of ideas. And one of them, he said, oftentimes designers come to us and they have a new material that they've, laid their hands on, and they don't really know what this construction is. So is it a
Mm.
single jersey? Is it a tricot? Is it a jacquard? And we'd like some way to understand what that construction is. Do you think you could do something with AI? And because my background in finance involves really a lot of applied statistics, I'm kind of have a little bit of knowledge, maybe a little bit more than most people on AI and what makes it tick. Mostly it's statistical models applied to real world solutions. It's not some great monster that's going to take over our lives, but statistics can be useful.
Mm.
And I said to him, well, yeah, sure. And in about a week, I can probably figure out how to identify the various constructions. And about a year later, I think I was like, I think I got it. I think I figured it out.
Mm.
And from there, we spent a lot of time, mapping out really where the pain points and where the restrictions on speed to market were evident in the process of creating and manufacturing garments. And so the garments, if you're not familiar, and I apologize to anyone who's in the apparel industry for this gross generalization, but there are probably about 3 or 4 discrete elements you can sort of think of. So there's the design bit, which is here's something beautiful I want to make, or something desirable I desire to have people use and wear. Then there's the gathering of all the bits that make that thing up. So if I'm looking at a shirt, you might have buttons and thread and maybe collar stays. Maybe there's some special lining in your or on your shirt. Maybe some special treatment for the materials that go in the shirt. Then there's the construction, which is putting the things together, which happens often in a factory. And there's a delivery and selling of that thing. And so a lot of people concentrate on the selling of it. If I could just get more people to buy this particular product, somehow the reports of actual sales of products are difficult to come by, partially because brands don't normally release this type of information, but from various evidence, approximately, let's say 30 to 40% of garments that are in stores are not sold. So these are either thrown away, they're burned, they're disposed of in some way. And this is partially the criticism of sustainability. But that doesn't necessarily mean the reason is because consumers are lacking in choice, or that somehow if you could just push them to buy a little bit more, they would buy that extra 30%. Really, a lot of that is the speed to market is very, very slow. So the typical time for the construction of a garment, of course, depending on the garment, maybe several months up to 18 months. So people now are designing products for use in 2027. And most people say, well, that's ridiculous. How could anyone possibly know what the fashion, what the trends, what people are going to want to wear in 2027 are? What colors, that people are going to be excited about in that era. And in an era when, you release maybe 4, if you were lucky, 5, sort of collections a year, that was probably pretty acceptable, where you could plan over a period of time. But that's long gone. And part of the reason for the success of companies like Shein or Temu or Zara or H&M is that consumers like to have things immediately. And these companies have done extremely well and are extremely successful at what they do because they deliver what the customer wants and the customer needs. And so the larger, more established brands who are used to that, that quarterly cycle of releases has sort of fallen a bit behind because the processes are still relatively slow and they have not been addressed. And so what we address is the slowest part of that chain. That's not the design. It's not the manufacturing that has amazing, time motion studies to optimize sewing and cutting, but it's the materials management process. What are the bits that I need to make this product? This is primarily done through emails and Excel spreadsheets. And we, in a gross simplification, we build searchable databases of materials to allow suppliers and brands to collaborate in an IP protected space to create new materials to make amazing garments and get it to market much, much faster to meet the demand for customers, and thereby reducing waste because you're not producing something that people don't want, you're producing something that people want immediately. And it helps improve the margins of the suppliers and the brands and makes the world a little bit better by reducing the waste. That's a long explanation.
No, that's fantastic. It's so interesting. Yeah, I suppose most people, like you said, think about how we're going to sell more, but they don't think about those other sides to it. So it's very interesting to go into detail with that. So appreciate that. And I suppose, how do you see Delvify evolving in the next few years?
World domination, obviously. That's the
Great.
joy of the dream of every entrepreneur is to get so big
Yes.
that that the government of the country you're working in will try to shut you down because you're a monopoly and have taken
Yeah.
over a particular industry. We really are focused very, very intently on our customers and making sure that our customers are happy and that we deliver features that are good for them. And I
Mm,
think that for us, the overall mission for our company and for our teams is to deliver for our customers. We're very, very customer centric. This is
mhm,
very much an Asian value, I think, although it's shared in many other countries in the world, is that we're primarily not out to, make a quick buck and to,
mm,
to have some payout immediately. We really want to make a difference in the lives of our customers and make their products, so make the amazing, amazing designs and beautiful prints and just some really, really cool stuff
mm,
delivered to customers and get it into their hands quickly and make people happy with their
mm.
purchases and make them, a little bit better, make their lives a little bit better. So focus really clearly on client happiness.
Okay, great. And you've led and advised teams across industries and continents. How has your leadership philosophy changed over the years? And are there any lessons that stand out for you?
Well, I think what's kind of interesting is that I've worked in an international environment for a long time, and the apparel industry is a very international environment. You have
Mm,
um, mills in China, factories in Sri Lanka, brands in France, owners of these brands in America, retail shops all around the world. So you really have to learn very early on how to find the best in everyone else and find sort of common platforms that everyone can join and produce good work.
mm,
And so that requires, making sure that the content of your message is very clear, easy to understand, easily graspable by people who may not share your language. You have to foster an environment where people want to work together towards common goals. You have to promote people based on what they do rather than who they are or what they look like. You have to really be able to ensure that everyone is heard in some way in the process. Partially because it's good to have people's input, also because cultural and other factors may prevent people from being as forward as they might be in their own culture. So really, the problems of working in international environment are things that many cultures and many countries struggle with internally, as well as immigration has transformed most countries around the world into sort of in some sense, a multicultural, or nations contain many cultures within them. And
mm.
so you have to learn how to create common bonds and common workflows for everyone. And it's not an easy thing to do. It
Yeah.
requires a lot of thought and work. And but yeah, that's really the main sort of focus of what I like to say as the CEO. Really, my job is just to bring the tea to everyone else. So make
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
happy so that they work together well.
Very nice. I like that. And when it comes to sustainability, how do you think founders can balance business growth with environmental responsibility in a real, tangible way?
Well, this is quite a deep question, and I'm not sure I can answer it to the satisfaction of any listener, because people have their own views of what sustainability are and what the goals of sustainability is.
Mm,
Um, and sustainability is not anything new. We've been for many, many years, probably since the Industrial Revolution and the destruction that coal-fired hearths rent in London is well documented. We've been struggling with the idea of the waste and the excess that comes from what is probably one of the most successful ideas in humankind history that has brought more joy and advancement and health to anyone else, and that's free market capitalism. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have its downsides, and one of that downside is waste. What I certainly am not for is a sort of hectoring of people for their choices. So this idea that the way we get to sustainability is to say people they're very, very naughty and they shouldn't do this particular thing. For example, they should not buy clothes from wherever it is. And there are governments who think that the way to do this is to tell people to, stop buying a certain product because they're harming someone else. And I really believe in free choice for people and let people enjoy their life as they will. And that really the sustainability is not a question of less waste for businesses. It's more a question of higher margins and better profitability. Because every time, and if you think about this from a business point of view, every business that produces something that someone doesn't buy, every time you have a business that throws the waste in a river, either reduces your immediate margin or degrades the environment in which you can thrive profitably. And it's not in the interests of business to waste. Now, there are businesses that do waste and try to send their waste into the public in ways that are, abhorrent. And, the role of government is partially to avoid that publication, the throwing the waste on someone else to clean up. But really, businesses need to learn to be more efficient, and that efficiency means less waste. And with less waste comes better margins, and that's the initiative that businesses really thrive on. So businesses are there to make a profit, to really sell something that people desire, and to do that at a margin that provides for the employees and the shareholders and the community at large. And reducing waste is really the way forward to make a better world. Now, there's a very famous Jewish aphorism that says that your job in the world is not to perfect it, but neither shall you cease from it. So the idea is that you and I are not going to make the world perfect. That doesn't mean we have to stop not trying. And we should continue to try and make things perfect. And in another way, that's the saying, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So if you're a business striving to make your products with less waste, make it at a higher margin to incentivize the people in the businesses to do it, you're doing a good thing. You keep at it, keep going. You're not going to solve it by shaming people into not doing something. You really need to solve it by providing those incentives that make businesses happy with what they're doing and consumers.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And what would you say keeps you grounded? And also, since this is called Finding Flow, what does finding flow mean to you? And what does it look like for you, I suppose, these days? Yeah.
Well, Finding Flow is an interesting title, and I like it very much. I spend a lot of the year in the Japanese city of Kyoto, which is a deeply Buddhist city. I'm not Buddhist myself, but you're in a Buddhist city and you kind of, catch the vibe. And one of the things that Buddhism teaches you really well is to be present. And being present really is observing what's around you, understanding where you are at any time. Some people say it's, live in the moment. I'm not necessarily clear that it means live in the moment in the sense of just enjoy yourself with whatever's going on, but really understand what's happening and understand that time is flowing around you, and that if you're in that time, you should be able to sense that things are happening and moving forward, and you should be able to join in that flow. And when you're doing your tasks or your work, you're aware that it's progressing forward and you're moving with a flow forward and you're not stopped. And everything you does has a progression. We go forward
Yeah.
in time and never sort of back.
Yeah.
So the grounding really is, I come back to what I said at the very beginning, is trying to be present for my staff and for the people I work with and my customers, and to understand that they're also present at the same time as me. So my awareness of the presence is they're solving their own problems and they have their own, difficulties. And if I can help them solve their problems and make their difficulties less, then I will have been successful in the moment and I can move to the next.
Perfect. Well, Charles, that's all of the questions that I have for today. And I found it really, really insightful to speak with you, and I really appreciate everything you've shared. So thank you so much for being on Finding Flow.
Well, you're very kind, Kyle. Thank you for listening to my rather long-winded loquaciousness, but I hope to be back on your podcast soon.
Definitely, it would be amazing. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.